What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I'm going to be showing you guys the most effective strategies for killing the Leprechaun in CoD World War II. And that is a phrase I never thought I would say with Call of Duty. So just in case you guys haven't seen yet, with the Shamrock and Awe event, in the featured tab, we have the Leprechaun Hunt Mosh Pit. What this is it's just designed to be a silly, just for fun, themed mode for this event. And it's a mosh pit of various regular game modes, but throughout these games, a Leprechaun will spawn several times. The person that kills this Leprechaun will get 2,000 score towards their score streaks, which means you instantly get all of your score streaks, even if you're running the highest ones, unless you're running requisitions, which you absolutely shouldn't be in this mode. So obviously, in this mode, you want to run the highest streaks possible, or at least the highest streaks that you really want to be earning, and you really want to be able to kill that Leprechaun if you can make it happen. Today I'm going to be sharing all of the details I was able to find on the Leprechauns, as well as the most effective ways I've found to kill them. So let's start off with the attributes of these Leprechauns. We got to figure out how they work and everything before we find out the most effective ways to kill them. Keep in mind, all of this had to be tested in public matches, and therefore I couldn't test with absolute perfect accuracy like I could in a custom game. So first up, how much health do they have? Based on my testing, it's 1,000 health, so they have 10 times the health of a normal player, and they're quite a bit smaller than a normal player, so it does take quite a bit to get a kill on these. As far as the number of times a Leprechaun will spawn in a match, this does appear to be tied to game mode, but I can't say with absolute certainty. I'm just looking at my testing and everything, and it seemed pretty consistent per game mode. But just know, Leprechauns will spawn about 5 to 7 times per match. As far as when they spawn in a match, this appears to be somewhat random. I couldn't find any consistent trends with this. Sometimes there's a big gap between each Leprechaun spawn, and there's been other times where literally the moment one Leprechaun dies, another one spawns. And location as well. Location seems to be pretty randomized too. I've had Leprechaun spawn pretty far from people. I've had Leprechaun spawn basically right at my feet. There really doesn't seem to be much rhyme or reason to the location or the timing of these Leprechaun spawns. Now, one interesting fact when these Leprechauns spawn is sometimes they spawn coded as a teammate and sometimes they spawn coded as an enemy. Now, regardless of which one they spawn as, if it's a teammate or an enemy, you can still kill them just fine, exactly the same, there's no change there. All that changes is if they spawn in coded as a teammate, they will show up on your minimap as a teammate. And as long as you're able to separate that from your actual teammates when looking at the minimap, you can track the Leprechaun a lot more effectively. When it's not a teammate though, it's not showing up on the minimap, but another interesting thing I found out, I was doing a bunch of just messing around and testing, if you're using the perk Espionage and the Leprechaun spawns as an enemy, if you shoot that Leprechaun once, it will appear for you as well as your teammates in real time on the minimap as a red dot. This also appears to be completely random. Some people are saying it alternates. That's not the case based on my testing. It's just randomized as to which team it ends up on. Now, one last attribute I wanted to talk about with the Leprechaun is its different states. When it's at full health, or it has a lot of health left, it is really fast, really jukey, and super hard to hit a lot of the times. Sometimes it does a weird thing where it just stops randomly on its own though. I don't know if that's just the coding getting confused, or maybe that's just how it is coded. It's meant to do that every once in a while. But as you damage a Leprechaun, I believe once you get it below half health, so when it's down to 500 health, it seems to go into aggro mode. It actually starts attacking a player nearby. Keep in mind, I don't believe it can actually deal any damage to players. I think it's just like running up and like pinching them or something like that. But if you see that it is going into this aggro mode, it will start slowing down as well. It might even stop completely and just stand still. This means it's super low health and it might be time to pull out your finisher, which we're going to talk about in a little bit here. So those are the attributes. That's how the Leprechaun seems to work. Now let's look at the most effective way to kill the Leprechaun. So first up, for the primary weapon, I did a bunch of testing as well as a bunch of math on this as well, just going and looking at the hard-coded stats on all the weapons with their damage per second and everything like that, as well as magazine capacity. And it seems to me at least that the clear choice for this is the Lewis LMG with extended mags. This gun just has the perfect balance between having a great damage at 40 damage per shot, excellent accuracy, so you're not going to be bouncing off target all the time because it's a relatively small target to hit, especially if you're trying to take them out at mid-range, a great magazine capacity, and also a good enough fire rate. And fire rate is important because you're often competing with other people, and all that matters with the Leprechaun is the person that puts that last bullet into him. Even if you deal 99% of the damage, if somebody comes in and takes that last 1%, they're the ones that get credit for it. This is why we don't want a gun with a super low fire rate, because then there's a good chance that in between your shots, somebody with a high fire rate gun is just going to clean up that last little bit of damage. And I feel like the Lewis just gives you the best balance of that. Now, I just wanted to mention, I tested FMJ, and it appears to have no impact on the amount of damage you deal to the Leprechaun. It's still a great attachment, but it's not killing the Leprechaun any faster based on my testing. So that's the primary, we got that sorted out, but what about other things that can deal a lot of damage in a short period of time? Mainly we're looking at explosives here. These are what I like to call the finishers. You usually don't want to be using the explosives early on because they're usually clunky, they take a lot of time to activate and throw or shoot or whatever it might be. So if you're activating your finisher early, then it's a big waste. You want to wait until the Leprechaun is in that state where he's not moving very fast, he's possibly even standing completely still. This is where you pull out your finisher. And the best finishers I was able to find for this is, first off, the Panzerschreck launcher. The bazooka could work as well, but you have to be very precise with this and make sure you hit him dead on. If you get a direct hit on a Leprechaun, it will deal 400 damage. As a result, this is an excellent finisher and a great way to steal that kill as a bunch of other people have already damaged that Leprechaun. Next up on my list is the Satchel Charge. One single Satchel Charge will deal 256 damage if you get it right at the feet of that Leprechaun, if you essentially hit the Leprechaun with it. That's 256 damage, which is great, and that only takes up a lethal slot. It doesn't necessarily take up your basic training and your secondary like a launcher will. And to make this even more effective, you can run this with Saboteur, which will give you 2 Satchel Charges, as well as the ability to detonate them faster. So that's definitely a great finisher as well. Moving on to the next on my list for finishers, this is a melee weapon. If you swap over to a shovel or a trench knife or whatever it might be, you will deal 150 damage per swipe with that, which can be a good option. However, the big downside of that is you have to be standing right on top of the Leprechaun, which is usually a death trap because normally you have a bunch of enemies and teammates fighting for killing that thing, and if you're standing right on it, you're just a free kill for them. And I also wanted to mention with this, you don't necessarily need to have a melee weapon. If you just melee him with the butt of your gun, you'll still deal 95 damage per swipe, which is a good amount of damage, and you might just get lucky and use that as a nice finisher. Now, one other weapon that I've seen a lot of people suggest, and it is relatively effective for taking out this Leprechaun, is actually a score streak, and this is the Flamethrower. I tried Molotov cocktails as well. They're really hard to aim at the Leprechaun. He just moves too fast, so I wouldn't recommend using those. But with the Flamethrower, you don't have to be super precise with your shot. You just have to kind of spray the fire in his general direction, and you're going to be dealing the initial damage as well as the damage over time. Now, this can be good, especially when the Leprechaun's moving really fast. However, in my mind, it has too many downsides. First off, the time to kill is actually quite a bit slower than the time to kill with the Lewis, assuming you're hitting your shots with the Lewis. Also, you're sacrificing one of your precious score streak slots in this game mode, because when you kill that Leprechaun, you get full streaks of any streak you want. So instead of wasting one on a mid-tier Flamethrower, it's much better in my mind to have 3 top-tier streaks to earn when you kill that Leprechaun. And finally, you have to actually be able to earn that Flamethrower on your own in the first place in order to be able to use it against the Leprechaun to get the rest of your streaks. So if you've got a Flamethrower, it's not a terrible option to take out the Leprechaun, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Now, one final tip to mention when taking out the Leprechaun is stun grenades work great if you can hit the Leprechaun with your stun. It's very difficult because you never know which way he's going to go. He's really jukey, and your stun grenades bounce a little bit, and they take a little bit of time to actually go off. But if you manage to hit a Leprechaun with your stun grenade, they will just stand completely still for several seconds, and then they're just an easy target at that point. So just a quick recap, my most consistent and effective ways for taking out the Leprechaun is run that Lewis with extended mags, light that Leprechaun up as much as possible till he starts slowing down, then swap over to a Panzerschreck or a bazooka and hit him directly. If you get your timing right with that launcher and you pull it out at just the right time and you hit your shot properly, that is probably the most consistent way to take out the Leprechaun in my mind. Having said that, a close second for me would be running Saboteur with 2 Satchel Charges, once again with the Lewis, light him up initially, get that health down a little bit, then spam both of your Satchel Charges and detonate it. That will also get you pretty consistent kills on that Leprechaun. Now, of course, this method doesn't guarantee you're going to be getting the Leprechaun every single time by any means, because there's a lot of randomness involved with this and a lot of people fighting over it. But it's all about consistency, and this is what I found is consistently working the best for me. I'd like to know in the comment section below, are there any other strategies or techniques that you personally have for taking out this Leprechaun that you feel might be better than mine? If so, let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.